The smell of buttered popcorn filled the air, a stark contrast to the tension that would soon unfold. It was a typical Friday night for us, Jimmy and Sandy, with our longtime friends, Jerry and Rachel, sprawled on the couch for a movie night. The chosen film, same time next year, was about a decades-long affair, with the lovers meeting annually despite being married to others. As the credits rolled, the room was silent, except for the occasional sniffle from Rachel and Sandy. The movie, while touching, struck a nerve in me, considering its glorification of deceit. "What nonsense," I muttered, shaking my head, unable to contain my disapproval. "They're both cheating on their families, and you both think it's so sad? They should be found in the arms of their lovers and shot." "Jimmy, how can you say that?" "They were true lovers, only met once a year," Maria replied, her voice a mix of shock and a plea for understanding. I scoffed, the absurdity hitting me harder than expected. "So, what you're saying is that I can have sex with my ex-girlfriend once a year as long as Sandy doesn't find out about it?" Sandy's face turned a shade of red I hadn't seen before. "You bastard, this isn't about you and your old flames. This is about people who are really in love. I doubt you'll ever understand that." Jerry, ever the peacemaker, sensed the escalating tension. "Guys, maybe we should switch to something lighter, huh? No need to let a movie ruin a good night." I nodded, reluctantly agreeing, though the jovial atmosphere had already soured. As Sandy stood up to fetch more drinks, her eyes avoided mine, her usual warm glance replaced with a cold indifference that sent shivers down my spine. I turned off the TV and we moved to the kitchen to play cards, but the echo of our earlier conversation hung heavily over us like a storm cloud. The night had begun with laughter and light-hearted banter, a reminder of our shared history and the bonds we thought unbreakable. Yet, as we shuffled the cards and laid out our hands, the smiles were strained, the laughter a bit too loud. Underneath it all, a question lingered in my mind, unspoken yet palpable. What if Sandy's tears weren't just for the movie? What if they were for something, or someone, else? As the laughter and chatter from movie night faded into the background of my restless night, I found myself wandering down the corridors of my memories, arriving inevitably at the doors that led to my past with Tiffany. Lying awake in bed, I stared at the ceiling, my mind replaying the scenes of my youth with Tiffany. The sweet scent of jasmine from her hair as we danced at our senior prom, the sound of her laughter echoing through the halls of our high school, and the feel of her hand in mine as we promised to tackle whatever life threw our way. These memories were as vivid as if they had happened yesterday. "Why can't things just be simple like they were back then?" I murmured to the shadows in our bedroom, the silence answering back with the weight of current realities. Sandy stirred beside me, her voice sleepy yet sharp. "What are you mumbling about over there? Can't sleep?" "Just thinking about old times," I replied, my voice tinged with nostalgia and a hint of something else. Regret, perhaps, or longing. "Old times, huh? Or old flames?" Sandy's voice was now fully awake, a hard edge to her words. "It's nothing, just old high school stuff. Go back to sleep," I said, trying to dismiss the conversation I wasn't sure I wanted to have. But sleep eluded me. I got out of bed and walked to the living room, where the quiet of the night provided a blank canvas for my thoughts. I remembered how Tiffany and I had drifted apart after graduation as life propelled us in different directions, me into an electrician's apprenticeship and her to a college across the state. Sitting there in the dark, a realization dawned on me. The ease of our youth hadn't been a testament to the strength of what Tiffany and I had, but rather the simplicity of life itself at that time. We hadn't faced the tests that true relationships endure. Yet here I was, decades later, thinking of her in the middle of the night while my wife slept in the next room. I found myself pulling out my phone, scrolling through the contacts. Tiffany's name still there, a relic of a past long gone. I hesitated, my thumb hovering over her name. Would reaching out shatter the delicate balance of my current life? Or had that balance already begun to crumble? The floor creaked behind me, and I quickly turned off my phone, guilt surging through me as if I'd been caught in an act of betrayal. Can't sleep either, huh? Sandy's voice was softer now, devoid of the earlier accusation. No, just a lot on my mind, I guess, I admitted, avoiding her gaze. We can talk about it, you know. Whatever it is, she offered, sitting down beside me, her presence a reminder of the complexities of love that the movies never show. Maybe it was the vulnerability of the night or the distance I felt between us, but I found myself opening up about the doubts and fears swirling within me, not about Tiffany, but about us, about me and Sandy. It was a conversation long overdue, the first honest words spoken in the quiet of a night that held more questions than either of us had answers for. The morning light filtered through the blinds, casting long shadows across the kitchen where Sandy and I sat opposite each other, nursing our coffees more out of habit than desire. The air was thick with the unspoken tensions of last night's conversations and the remnants of dreams interrupted by reality. I found birth control pills in your purse, I said abruptly, my voice cutting through the silence like a knife. The words hung in the air, heavy and accusing, and I watched as Sandy's expression shifted from surprise to defensiveness. Jimi, why were you going through my things? Her tone was sharp, her brow furrowed in a mixture of anger and confusion. I wasn't snooping, Sandy. They fell out when I was looking for the car keys, but that's not the point. Why do you have them? I had a vasectomy. We agreed on that. We agreed we were enough, just us and the kids. My voice was steadier than I felt, the confusion and hurt swirling inside me. Sandy set down her coffee mug, her fingers tracing the rim nervously. It's complicated, Jimi. It's not what you think, I needed some control over my body, that's all. Control? Sandy, that doesn't make any sense. Talk to me. Please. The plea was genuine, my heart aching for something truthful from her lips. It's just, there's been so much going on with me, emotionally, physically. I started taking them again to regulate my cycles. They've been all over the place since. She trailed off, her eyes not meeting mine. Since what? Sandy, you can tell me. Is there something you're not saying? My question was more of a whisper, the fear of her possible confession lodging itself in my throat. Sandy sighed, a deep, weary sound that seemed to carry the weight of 1,000 unspoken words. Jimi, I think we might need more than just a conversation. Maybe some space or... Space? Are you saying you want a break from us? My voice cracked, the idea of distance between us feeling like the beginning of the end. No, not a break from us, just some time to figure myself out. I haven't been honest with you, or with myself. It's not fair to either of us. Sandy's voice was firm, but her hands shook slightly as she spoke. What hasn't been fair? Is there someone else, Sandy? Just be honest with me. The question was out before I could stop it, driven by a mix of suspicion and desperation. Sandy met my gaze then, her eyes filled with tears. Jimi, I didn't want it to come to this. Not now, not like this. Her voice was a broken whisper, her admission hanging between us, stark and irrevocable. As her confession unfolded, the room seemed to shrink, the walls closing in on me. Each word she spoke dismantled the life we had built together, brick by brick. There was someone else, a revelation that tore through the fabric of our marriage with the sharpness of a blade. Her affair wasn't just a betrayal, it was a redefinition of everything I thought our life together meant. I need to walk. I need to think. I stood up abruptly, my chair scraping against the tile floor harshly. Jimi, please, let's try to sort this out. Together. Sandy's voice was pleading now, but it was too late. The floodgates had opened, and no amount of talking could unhear the truths that spilled out. I left the house without another word, the cool morning air a small relief against the heat of my swirling thoughts. As I walked, the physical distance mirroring the emotional chasm that had opened up between us, I wrestled with the shards of our fractured life, wondering if there was any way to piece it back together, or if the cracks had always been there, hidden beneath the surface. After hours of walking, the cool air couldn't temper the heat of my emotions. By the time I returned, the sun was setting, casting long shadows across the front porch where I found Sandy waiting, her posture tense, wrapped in a thin shawl against the evening chill. "Jimmy, I'm glad you're back. We need to talk, properly this time," Sandy called out softly as I approached. Her voice held a tremor that spoke of fear and uncertainty. I paused at the bottom of the steps, my heart heavy. "Yes, we do. Let's not stand out here, though." Once inside, we sat across from each other at the kitchen table where earlier confrontations had unfolded. The room felt colder now, the air between us laden with apprehension. "Jimmy, before you say anything, I want you to know that I never meant for any of this to happen," Sandy began, her eyes not meeting mine, staring instead at her hands clasped tightly in her lap. "I've heard that before, Sandy, but it doesn't tell me why." My voice was calm but firm, demanding the truth that had been withheld. "It started about a year ago." She hesitated, taking a deep breath before continuing. "I met someone at the gym, Zach. It was nothing at first, just casual talks after workouts, but then it became more." I felt a cold wave wash over me, the name Zach anchoring the betrayal into reality. "More how, Sandy? How could you let it become more?" Sandy's voice broke as she spoke. "I was lonely, Jimmy. You were always working. The kids have their own lives now, and I felt abandoned." Tears started to stream down her cheeks. "That doesn't excuse what I did. It just happened. Lonely. So you decided to fill that loneliness by betraying our marriage?" I couldn't hide the bitterness and pain in my voice. "I'm so sorry, Jimmy. I know sorry doesn't fix anything. I ended it months ago. I realized it was a mistake, but I was too cowardly to tell you. I didn't want to lose you, to lose our family. But you chose to risk it all, Sandy. For what? For some fling?" The room spun slightly as I tried to digest her words, the foundation of our life together now cracked and unstable. It wasn't just a fling, but yes, it was a mistake, a terrible one. "I love you, Jimmy. I never stopped loving you," Sandy pleaded, reaching out her hand across the table, but I couldn't bring myself to take it. "And the pills?" I asked, the final piece of the puzzle laying heavy between us. "They were a precaution. I didn't want to bring another complication into our lives. I ended everything with Zach before anything needed to be used, but I kept them, out of fear." "Fear of what? That you'd do it again?" I pulled away, standing up from the table as the walls of our kitchen seemed to close in on me. "Jimmy, please, can we find a way through this? I don't want to lose you. I don't want our marriage to end over this." Sandy stood as well, her face a mask of desperation and sorrow. "I need to think, Sandy. I need space to sort through this." The hurt was too fresh, too raw for me to consider forgiveness or to think about the future. As I turned to leave the room, Sandy's voice stopped me. "Jimmy, whatever you decide, I'm here. I'll do whatever it takes to fix this. I'm so sorry." Her words followed me as I went upstairs to the solitude of our bedroom, the room now feeling alien and cold. Lying in the dark, the future uncertain, I pondered the shattered pieces of our marriage, wondering if they could ever be put back together, or if the cracks had widened too far to ever truly heal. The next few days passed in a blur of routine, each of us moving around the house like ghosts, our interactions minimal and strained. The air was heavy with the unspoken, the future of our marriage hanging precariously in the balance. It was during one of these silent evenings, while I was mindlessly flipping through channels in the living room, that my phone buzzed with a number I hadn't seen in years. "Hello?" My voice sounded foreign to my own ears, strained from the lack of use. "Jimmy, it's Tiffany. I'm sorry to call out of the blue like this. I wouldn't if it weren't important." Her voice was hurried, tinged with a desperation that immediately set me on edge. "Tiffany, hey. It's been a long time. What's going on? Is everything okay? Concern colored my tone, memories of our past momentarily pushing aside the present turmoil. It's Joshua, my son. He's very sick, Jimmy. He needs a liver transplant and… She trailed off. The sound of her trying to stifle a sob came through the phone. My heart sank. I'm so sorry to hear that, Tiff. How can I help? The immediacy of her need, the realness of such a life-threatening situation, cut through the fog of my own troubles. We've been searching for a match for months now. No luck yet. The doctors say a partial liver donation from a living donor is the best chance he has. I remembered you have the same rare blood type as him, and I thought, maybe, just maybe, you'd consider being tested. Tiffany's request hung between us, heavy with implications. I paused, the weight of her ask not lost on me. Of course I'll get tested. Where do I need to go? What do I need to do? The decision was simple in the face of a child's life hanging in the balance. Thank you, Jimmy. I can't tell you how much this means to us. There's a clinic downtown that can do the preliminary tests. I can send you the details. If you match, there's a lot to consider, but just knowing you're willing to try is more than I could have hoped for. We talked a little longer, Tiffany giving me the necessary information and thanking me repeatedly. After we hung up, I sat back, the gravity of the situation settling in. I hadn't expected to ever reconnect with Tiffany, especially not under such dire circumstances. Later that evening, I found Sandy in the kitchen, her back to me as she washed dishes. Sandy, I need to talk to you about something important, I began, unsure how to broach the subject. She turned off the water and dried her hands, facing me with a cautious expression. What is it, Jimmy? It's Tiffany, my ex. Her son Joshua is very sick. He needs a liver transplant, and she asked if I could get tested as a potential donor. I told her I would. I watched her carefully, gauging her reaction. Sandy's eyes widened slightly, but then she nodded slowly. I see. That's a big decision, Jimmy. But I understand why you'd want to help. Is there anything you need from me? I need to go to the clinic tomorrow to get the preliminary tests done. I wanted you to know. I felt a mix of appreciation and relief at her calm response, given everything else we were dealing with. Okay. I hope you're a match for Joshua's sake. Let me know if you need anything, Jimmy. Sandy's voice was soft, supportive in a way that reminded me of better times between us. As I headed to bed that night, the world seemed both smaller and infinitely larger, the personal grievances giving way to a more universal struggle for life and health. Whatever my future held with Sandy, stepping up for Tiffany and her son felt like the right thing to do, a small beacon of purpose in the storm of my current life. The clinic was a sterile, quiet place that seemed to echo my thoughts back at me as I waited to be called in for testing. The initial tests were simple: blood drawn, health history discussed, but the implications of each procedure weighed heavily on me. After the samples were taken, I was left alone in a small, stark consultation room, waiting for the nurse to return with preliminary results. My phone vibrated, pulling me from my thoughts. It was Sandy checking in. How's it going? Are you okay? I'm done with the first round of tests. Just waiting now. It's all kind of surreal, I replied, the reality of what I was doing setting in more deeply with each passing moment. I can imagine. Just remember, whatever happens, I'm here. We'll handle it together. Sandy's voice was calm, a stark contrast to the turmoil of our recent interactions. Thanks, Sandy. That means a lot, I responded, feeling a mix of gratitude and confusion. Our relationship might have been on shaky ground, but in this moment, her support felt genuine and necessary. The door opened, and the nurse came back with a clipboard. Mr. Jimmy, the preliminary tests are back. You're a potential match for the recipient. We'll need to conduct further assessments to ensure compatibility and discuss the risks involved if you decide to proceed. Thank you. I'll need some time to think about everything. I stood, taking the information she handed me about the next steps and risks of the procedure. Walking out of the clinic, the weight of the decision pressed down on me. Helping Tiffany's son, Joshua, could mean a significant change in my own life. The risks of surgery, the recovery time, the impact on my already strained marriage. There was a lot to consider. Back at home, Sandy and I sat down at our kitchen table, the same place where so many crucial conversations had taken place recently. "I'm a match," I began, watching her closely. "That's good news, right?" "I mean, for Joshua," Sandy said, her voice a mixture of relief and concern. "It is. But it's a big step. There are risks involved with the surgery and the recovery time. It's not insignificant." I laid out the pamphlets the nurse had given me, filled with medical jargon and statistics. Sandy reached over, taking one of the pamphlets, reading through it carefully. "This is a lot, Jimmy, but it's an incredible thing you're thinking about doing. Saving a child's life. I know, it's just a lot to process. If something happens to me, I worry about you, about the kids." My voice trailed off, the burden of the decision making it hard to continue. "Jimmy, whatever you decide, I'll support you. We're in a tough spot, I know. But this is beyond us. It's about giving a little boy a chance at life. If you choose to do this, we'll make it work. We'll get through the recovery together," Sandy said, her hand covering mine. Her words, so full of resolve and support, helped clear the fog of doubt. "I need to do this, Sandy. Not just for Joshua, but for me. I need to know I can do something good, something right in all this mess." Sandy nodded, squeezing my hand. "Then we'll do this. Together. Let's talk to the doctors about the next steps." As we made plans for the upcoming surgery, I felt a renewed sense of partnership with Sandy, despite the unresolved issues between us. This decision, to help a child in desperate need, seemed to bridge the gap in our relationship, if only for the moment. It was a crossroads, not just for my relationship with Sandy or Tiffany, but for my own sense of self, choosing a path of generosity and bravery in the face of personal adversity. The weeks following my decision to undergo the surgery were a whirlwind. The preparations for the procedure were extensive. More tests, consultations with doctors, and sessions with a counselor to ensure I was mentally and physically prepared for the donation. Amidst it all, the distance between Sandy and me began to narrow, a gentle thawing of the frost that had settled between us after her confession. The night before the surgery, Tiffany came over to our house to express her gratitude. Seeing her in our living room, the weight of what was to come hit me with renewed force. Joshua's life was quite literally in my hands. "Jimmy, I can't thank you enough for this. You're giving Joshua a chance at a whole new life," Tiffany said, her eyes glistening with tears. "I know it's a big step, but I feel right about it, Tiff." "How's Joshua holding up?" I asked, trying to sound more confident than I felt. "He's scared, but he's a tough kid. He's looking forward to getting back to normal, playing soccer again, just being a kid without all these hospital visits." Tiffany smiled weakly, her hope mingled with palpable fear. Sandy, who had been quietly supportive, spoke up. "We're all pulling for him, Tiffany. Jimmy's doing something wonderful." Tiffany reached across the coffee table, squeezing Sandy's hand. "Thank you, Sandy, for supporting him through this. I know it's not easy." The conversation moved to lighter topics, but the gravity of the next day lingered over us like a silent sentinel. The day of the surgery arrived. Lying in the hospital bed, I was surrounded by bustling nurses, beeping machines, and the sterile smell of antiseptic. Sandy was there, holding my hand tightly as the nurse prepped me for the operating room. "Hey, you're going to be great, Jimmy. Joshua needs you strong and ready to fight," Sandy whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "I will be. I'm doing this for him, for us, for a fresh start. It feels like this is something I need to do. Not just for Joshua, but for me too. To make things right," I murmured, squeezing her hand in return. "Just come back to me, okay?" Sandy said, her usual resolve breaking slightly. "I promise," I replied, trying to offer her a reassuring smile. As the nurses wheeled me away, I turned to see Sandy waving, a brave face painted over her worry. The last thing I saw before the operating room doors swung closed was her blowing me a kiss. Post-surgery, the recovery was slow and not without pain, but the news was good. The liver transplant was successful, and Joshua was doing well, his body accepting the new organ. As I recovered, Tiffany sent regular updates on his progress, each one lifting my spirits. One day, about a week after the surgery, Tiffany brought Joshua to visit. Seeing him walking into my hospital room, albeit slowly, was a sight that brought tears to my eyes. "Mr. Jimi, thank you for my new liver. I'm going to take good care of it," Joshua said, his voice serious but his eyes bright with the vigor of renewed health. "I know you will, buddy. Just make sure to score a goal for me in your first game back, okay?" I replied, ruffling his hair. As they left, Tiffany turned back at the door. "He's got a second chance because of you, Jimi. We're forever grateful." Those weeks in the hospital filled with pain, hope, and healing changed me. They repaired more than just Joshua's health. They mended broken parts of my soul and patched up tatters in my marriage. Sandy and I began to talk more openly and honestly than we had in years. It wasn't just about forgiveness. It was about understanding and moving forward together, whatever that might look like. "We have a lot to figure out, Sandy, but I think we can do it. We can start anew," I said one evening as she sat by my hospital bed. "I'd like that, Jimi. A new beginning for both of us," Sandy replied, her hand finding mine, her touch warm and sure. That conversation marked the start of our second chapter, tentative and fragile, but filled with the promise of renewal and hope. Several months had passed since the surgery, and with each day, both Joshua's strength and my own had improved. Our families had drawn closer through the ordeal, forging bonds that were cemented in the shared relief of Joshua's successful recovery. As spring ushered in blooming flowers and warmer days, Tiffany and I decided to host a small celebration to mark Joshua's return to health and to thank everyone who had supported us through the challenging times. It was also a moment for me to officially close a chapter that had taught me more about forgiveness and resilience than I had ever expected to learn. "Let's make this day about hope and new beginnings," Tiffany suggested as we planned the event in our backyard. "Absolutely. It's not just a celebration for Joshua, it's for all of us, a way to say thanks and to look forward to what's next," I agreed, feeling a sense of closure and renewal. The day of the celebration was filled with laughter and light. Friends and family gathered, mingling in the soft glow of the afternoon sun. Sandy was beside me, her presence a comforting reminder of the journey we had embarked on to mend our relationship. As I looked around at the joyful faces, I felt a tap on my shoulder. Turning, I found Joshua standing there, a shy smile on his face. "Mr. Jimi, I scored 2 goals at my soccer game last week," he announced proudly, his eyes sparkling with excitement. "That's fantastic, Joshua. I knew you had it in you. I'm proud of you, buddy," I responded, my heart swelling with pride and affection for the brave boy. Tiffany joined us, her smile bright. "He's been waiting all day to tell you that. You've become quite the hero to him, you know." "Hey, he's the real hero here. I just did what needed to be done," I said, feeling a bit embarrassed by the praise. As the party continued, I took a moment to pull Sandy aside. We found a quiet corner of the garden away from the noise. The air was filled with the scent of blooming roses and the faint murmur of conversations and laughter. "Sandy, this day, it's a lot," I began, searching for the right words. "It is, but it's good, Jimi. Seeing everyone here, seeing you healthy and Joshua thriving, it gives me so much hope," Sandy replied, her hand reaching out to squeeze mine. "I've been thinking about us, about all the pain and the healing. I know we have more to do, more to understand about each other. But I want that. I want to keep moving forward with you," I said earnestly, meeting her gaze. "I want that too, Jimi. Today feels like a real beginning, doesn't it? Not just for Joshua, but for us," Sandy agreed, her voice soft but sure. "We've been through so much. I think we can handle just about anything now," I added, feeling a sense of resolve. As the evening drew to a close, I stood up to make a short speech to our guests, thanking them for their support and love. Today isn't just a celebration of Joshua's health, it's a celebration of community, of family, and of the incredible power of human kindness. Thank you, all of you, for being our strength when we needed it most. Applause filled the air, and as it died down, I looked over at Sandy, her smile telling me all I needed to know. We were in this together, ready to face whatever came next with hope and determination. The day ended with a sense of peace, the sunset casting a warm glow over us all. In that golden light, I felt a profound gratitude for the second chances we'd been given and a deep understanding of the beauty found in new beginnings. Thank you for joining us on this emotional journey. If today's story resonated with you, or if you've experienced similar challenges in your relationships, remember you're not alone. We hope this video offers some insight or comfort as you navigate your own path forward. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments below. We value your perspectives and would love to hear your stories too. Join us next time for another profound exploration of the heart's resilience. Until then, take care and keep seeking your truth.